Everybody, this is Longhorn Confidential. This is Danny Davis with the Austin American-Statesman. As we all know, Texas, Ohio State. It's coming up this weekend. Big matchup, one versus three, one versus two, whatever poll you want to subscribe to. And we talk a lot about Texas here on Longhorn Confidential, so we need someone who's an expert on Ohio State. So we brought in Joey Kaufman of the Columbus Dispatch. You can read his work on dispatch.com. Check him on Twitter. I refuse to call it X at Joey R. Kaufman. Joey, how you doing? How's the scene in Columbus? What are we walking into this weekend?
Well, the scene in Columbus right now seems to be people arguing about Dave Portnoy and which personality will be admitted into Ohio Stadium in the lead up to Fox's big noon kickoff. But I think that just means it's about time they play the football game rather than devolving into sort of silly pre-game storylines. I think some real live game action would be welcomed in Columbus.
Yeah, speaking of silly storylines, is this noon kickoff thing an actual big deal among the Ohio State faithful, or is that just off-season chatter that we're just kind of taking and running with these days?
It's legit. I think Ohio State fans are a little fatigued of the frequency of noon games because really every big matchup they've had in the last few years have been at noon. We did a poll on our website a couple weeks back, and about two-thirds thought there were too many noon games. And there's a certain time of year where in November you want a noon game because you don't want to be out in Ohio in late November when the sun goes down. It gets pretty cold. But a lot of these big time non-conference games, the Penn State game, a lot of them have been at noon. They ended last year with six straight games at noon. So I think people might want some more time to tailgate in the parking lots and have some beverages before kickoff because they're certainly have not had a lot of opportunities to do that in recent years. And people remember the '05 Texas game. That was a night game, and you go back on YouTube and you watch the lead up to that, and it's September and it's this beautiful evening. I think people kind of imagine that sort of prime time telecast and feel for a big game, and they've had none of that in the last couple of years since the new Big Ten TV deal took effect.
After that '05 season was the last time Texas won a national championship. Ohio State does not have to go back nearly as far since they won last year. As this lead up to the season gets closer and closer, what's kind of the vibe with the players inside the building, even with the fans? Or is everyone still kind of on cloud nine and celebrating last year's title, or have they, done the cliche last year's team, we flipped the page and we're hungry for more this year?
They have done the cliche thing because they've talked about some of the banners in the locker room and the facility coming down, sort of players who were a part of the team last year who were saying that, hey, that was last year's team. This is a new team, and a lot of the recognition has come down. Sure, they still have a few banners here and there, but players have talked about that, and some of that is true for a lot of these guys. Ohio State lost 14 players to the NFL draft, which tied a school record. They had heavy turnover, so a lot of the guys who will be starting or be in the rotation on Saturday were players who were not starting or were playing the prominent roles last year. So I think it does give it a little bit of a newer flavor because outside of maybe the headliners, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Caleb Downs, you are going to see a lot of new faces and new names.
Now, speaking of Jeremiah Smith, we all know what a talent he is. I don't think he necessarily may have got to show it last year in the Cotton Bowl, one catch for 3 yards. I think Texas fans would be foolish to think that's going to happen again on Saturday. But when you look back at that matchup, and I don't know if he's talked about it, did Texas figure out something with him in that game, or did or did Ohio State just opt to go elsewhere and hurt Texas in other areas?
Texas really was committed to slowing him down in that game and really had some cloud coverage and put an extra safety over the top, which really limited him. I think that kind of showed the blueprint for how teams may attempt to cover him and just really frustrate him at times and limit his ability to be open. And Notre Dame was not the team to really try to replicate that formula. They played very aggressive man coverage and I don't think really allowed to sort of continue that trend. So I'll be curious if Texas tries to do the same thing and sell out to stop Jeremiah Smith, or maybe try to be a little more balanced, because even this year's team, I think, is no shortage of weapons around him. You have Carnell Tate back, who played well against Texas that first time, and Ohio State has also added Max Clare as a tight end transfer from Purdue, so he'll be in the mix. The biggest change, obviously, is a quarterback in Julian Sayin, and just what will be his ability to either get the ball to Jeremiah Smith, or find other safety valves if they do take away Jeremiah Smith on Saturday.
And when you look at the offense, obviously, you're not really worried about those receivers. There's a lot of talent coming back in that room, as you mentioned. But is there more concern about the new quarterback with Julian Sayin stepping in, or the backfield, since those two guys got drafted, and I don't think there's a single returning rushing yard from the Cotton Bowl, and Texas fans are still having nightmares about Travion Henderson. Is there more concerned about the backfield or the quarterback situation this season?
There has been more chatter about the quarterback change, because that just has a tendency to dominate headlines in the summer, and especially when you have a training camp competition. I think Julian Sayin will ultimately be okay at that spot. Whether he comes out strong out of the gate remains to be seen. I think the running back situation has been a little under discussed, because you lose such two longtime veteran running backs in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, with a lot of miles on those tires. Travion was very good in pass protection and really gave them an ability to ensure some extra protection for the quarterback. The screen pass at the end of the first half, certainly, as you mentioned, that will live in the minds of Longhorn fans for a few years at least. And you are not turning to a stable of running backs that just has a lot of experience. You have three true freshmen on scholarship. You have James Peoples, who will probably be the starter, who's a sophomore, and be in some sort of a rotation with CJ Donaldson, who's a veteran transfer from West Virginia. But there's just not a lot of bankable guys in that backfield. There's talent, sure, but just not the experience that they had, and certainly the proven ability to just eat tough yards and sort of, and even be a game changer, because that was the thing last year. With you had certainly Ohio State had veteran backs, but Travion Henderson had an ability, and you can snap your fingers and he could break off a touchdown. I don't know if they have that in this year's group yet. So the playmaking potential, I think, of the running back is another thing that remains to be seen. Not only do you not have the experience, but you don't have the proven experience of somebody being able to really change the game in an instance.
A lot of chatter over the years about in Columbus has been about Ryan Day, but I think last year kind of solidified his spot. But I'd like to ask you about the new coordinators at Texas. Under Steve Sarkisian, they've had the same coordinators the entire time that Steve's been in Austin. But this past offseason for Ohio State, Jim Knowles decided to go to Penn State, and Chip Kelly got a different job too. So I'm kind of wondering about the new guys, Brian Hartline, who's obviously been in the building, and Matt Patricia, who coming from the NFL. Which one of those guys has more to prove, and what have been your kind of first impressions of those guys from when you guys have gotten to talk to those guys?
A hard question to answer, because I think both of them have quite a bit to prove. For Brian Hartline, he was in this situation before 2 years ago, where he was the primary offensive coordinator but didn't actually call plays. Ryan Day was toying with the idea for the first time in his head coaching career, but ultimately retained the role as the primary play caller and didn't delegate it. It took hiring his coaching mentor, Chip Kelly, to fully go through with that. So can Brian Hartline take the load off Ryan Day's plate and be the primary play caller week to week, with some help from Keenan Bailey, the tight ends coach, who's the co-offensive coordinator? It's a young staff on offense. Hartline has never called plays in his career before. So he has a lot to prove on that front, to allow Ryan Day to continue to be that CEO coach, and be more of a game manager in games. And so he was not what Ryan Day at least was willing to trust 2 years ago. Can he do it this time? And then Matt Patricia takes over for Jim Knowles, who was at Ohio State for 3 years and really oversaw a defensive renaissance for them, because in 2021 they really regressed on defense, and ultimately led to the hiring of Jim Knowles. And you go through Ryan Day's career as the Ohio State head coach, their defense has had some really high highs in 2019 with Jeff Hafley, but then had that dip in 2021. It took hiring Jim Knowles to get them back on track. And that is not the side of the ball that Ryan Day has the background in. He wants somebody he can really delegate to with defense. He called Jim Knowles for many years the head coach of the defense. So he wants somebody who can really, I think, lead a really clear vision of the defense. And they're trying essentially with Matt Patricia to bring in somebody with some NFL experience, but also run what they've done on defense in recent years. He's coming into a situation where they retained all the same position coaches that they had in recent years. So they're trying to kind of to just do this just very near sort of I'm losing my analogy here, but to try to have both worlds here where you're bringing in somebody with an NFL background to truly run your defense, but also maintain some continuity and run the quote unquote Ohio State defense. And so that's the challenge for Matt Patricia is trying to sort of find that happy medium that Ryan Day wants. And he's somebody who's never really proven himself outside of being Bill Belichick's right-handed man and hadn't really been a defensive coordinator in recent years in the NFL. So he also, I think this is a little bit of a chance for him to to fix his reputation at least a little bit.
Last on-field question I really have for you, with those, as you mentioned, those 14 guys going out to the NFL and them losing a lot of, senior leaders. Who's the voice of this team? Is it a Sonny Styles? Is it a Caleb Downs? Who is the voice of this Ohio State team?
Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles are two big names. Both of them were voted as captains. Sonny Styles will be wearing the number 0, which Ohio State uses to give to a senior leader. They call it the Blocko number. Those are the two primary guys on defense. But it's going to be it's a very young team. They don't have a lot of seniors. It's a lot of guys who are sophomores and juniors, and they're going to have to grow up fast and lead this team because a lot of those voices are third-year guys, not a ton of fourth and fifth-year teams. And I imagine that's probably the case with a lot of rosters throughout the country. You're starting to see a lot of the guys who had the extra eligibility with COVID sort of phase out. So the sport in general feels much younger this season. Ohio State is no exception to that either.
This is the question that maybe only interests me, but we hear that Ohio State has the biggest press corps in college football. So I'm kind of wondering what's it like, competing on that beat, riding on that beat, working on that beat. I got to go to a media day around 2016 when I was in town for the NCAA volleyball tournament. So I got to go to campus and kind of get a little glimpse of it. But what's it like kind of being on that beat day to day and just kind of, competing with all those other Ohio State writers for stories and interviews and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's not always fun because you're trying to compete with so many people. Not to say I don't like my beat colleague, but it is nonetheless a challenge to try to fight and get stories that are unique to your news outlet, and it's not being disseminated and broadcast on the radio and television and online across the state with a whole bunch of media outlets. So it's great that there's attention around Ohio State football. The interest is great, and people want to read what you do. But that also it gives you a lot of competitors, and people are trying to do the same job as you are, and a lot of good quality people who also cover the team and a smart media contingent who know the ins and outs of the roster well. So that it's a challenge, but it keeps you on your toes. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think Texas is going to be rolling pretty deep this weekend, so we're going to get pretty snug in that press box. I have a feeling. But after the game gets done, what's the food recommendation? What's the environment going to be like on Saturday? What is Saturday going to be like for us making the trip?
Oh, that's a food question. I, German Village is a spot that a lot of people like. That's got some good German fare if you want to eat some schnitzel and some bratwurst. That would be a very Midwestern Ohio experience. Or you can get some pierogies at Pierogi Mountain. Those are some maybe some unique Midwestern fare. But there are no shortage of spaces around Columbus. Columbus is kind of like Austin, where it's a college town, it's the state capital, but it's a larger city as well. So it's growing. They're kind of I guess twinsies on that front. But fewer breakfast tacos here.
Yeah, very few breakfast tacos. When y'all come down, we'll be sure to treat y'all to some good breakfast. But I'll be sure to hit up those recommendations while I'm in town. Got to spend that company money while I have it. But that's Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch. If you want to check out his work, which I would recommend you do, dispatch.com at Joey R. Kaufman on Twitter. Joey, we appreciate the time, and we're looking forward to seeing y'all this weekend at the shoot. My first trip there, so I'm looking forward to it.
Texas' only second ever trip to Ohio Stadium. It's a rare matchup. It'll be fun.
Hopefully, it's as good as the game in 2005. But that keep us on our toes.